don't be your first no. Don't be the first person to like limit yourself. I think it's really important that you make sure that you are always trying to be your best advocate and just not being afraid to ask for anything too, because you never know what opportunities will present themselves if you just give it a go.
All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the What You Don't Hear podcast. This is a life podcast. It's a life story podcast. It's what I like to call an open journal dive into people's lives as I sit and I uncover the real story behind my guest journey, finding out what makes them who they are, talking about all those ups, all the downs, and all the thoughts and feelings in between as we dig into the parts of their story that we otherwise wouldn't get to hear. I am your host. My name is Ross Tyson. I am a creative of many kinds, a maker of many, many things. The list keeps growing, and on that ever-growing list of things that I felt so lucky to become a part of in the last few years is being involved in the comedy scene here in Columbus, Ohio. And my guest in this episode is a big part of that very scene and someone who I have had a blast getting to form a friendship with lately. And that is the extremely funny Hannah Romes. Now, she is a stand-up comedian, an improv comedian, a sketch comedian with her character Meemaw, which we definitely talk about into this episode, but she pretty much does all of it, as well as she's one of the co-owners of the company #Comedy Co. here in Columbus as well. Hannah's great, and while her and I have definitely had our fair share of those classic fun conversations over coffee out in the real world, not in podcast world, we've had a lot of those in the past, and we've really gotten to know each other. I've really gotten to know her pretty well, but we definitely dig into a different part of her story here in this episode. And I really feel like I got to know her, of course, a lot better as we sit down for this deep dive. So we can jump into that conversation. But first, I've got some really wonderful sponsors and supporters of this show to tell you about. So let's pay some bills. Let's support the people that support me. And then we will get into this blast of a conversation with Hannah. So first up, this month and this episode, I get to welcome a brand new sponsor to the show because this episode, we are sponsored by Fuzz Nail Salon. Now, Fuzz is located right in the heart of Clintonville here in Columbus, Ohio, and hosts a collective of independent nail artists who are passionate about what they do. Their artists are trained in creating everything from simple, elegant manicures to those highly detailed nail art that we all love to see posted around Instagram here and there, right? But they also like to make sure that their care goes beyond just how your nails look. Now at Fuzz, the artists prioritize nail health just as much as their outward beauty, and they work with clients to ensure that you achieve, well, the best nails for you. They're passionate about creating a space as well where everyone feels pampered and welcomed while connecting with their local Columbus community. Now Fuzz is also not only just a nail salon, they also host community events and curate work by local artists that they sell right there in the salon. Also, fun fact, one of those community events, well, actually a handful of them, I have been to at Fuzz. They've hosted a handful of comedy shows there. So I can tell you firsthand, while I haven't been there to get my nails done, I've been there to see the place and experience the atmosphere. It is genuinely such a fun and inviting place. So if you want to go, be sure to go check out one of their events, but also go get your nails done. And if you want more information, you can follow them at fuzz.columbus, or you can visit their website, fuzznailstudio.com, to book an appointment and begin that nail journey. And I thank them so very much for being a sponsor on this episode. This episode is also sponsored by our friends over at Midwest Photo. Now, Midwest Photo is a video, audio, and of course, a photo store located right here in Columbus. Now, Midwest is a place that I, as someone who has dabbled in photography over the years, it's a place that I've been to many times for many different reasons. And I'm here to tell you, it's a real rad place filled with real rad people. And I'm genuinely so excited that they have joined the show here as a sponsor. So let's talk about what is all inside the walls of Midwest Photo. Well, there's plenty of reasons that I've went there over the years, whether it's to purchase some camera gear ranging from everything from cameras themselves to lighting, backdrops, tripods. In fact, one of the tripods that the cameras that film this show are sitting on came from Midwest. But the list, of course, goes on all the way down to small things like SD cards. They truly have it all. Now, of course, if you're not looking to purchase, the good news is they also offer gear rental as well. It's in a list of many services that their intelligent and overly helpful staff are ready to help you with the moment you walk in the door. For real, whenever I've went in there for something, there is always someone ready to answer some questions and talk to you about video or photo or just the creative world in general. But along with rentals, they also offer a full in-house printing service, film development and scanning, used gear, buy and sell, and even classes and events so you can further your knowledge about the art and craft of photography. And the cool thing is, when you shop with them, you're not just supporting local and shopping small, but you're supporting folks who truly love photography and do a lot of work to support the local photo community here in Columbus. So go check them out. If you do, tell them that What You Don't Hear sent you their way. And if you want to find out more information on everything that they're about for yourself, you can follow them online at impex_photo_video, or simply jump to impex.com. That's MPEX.com. And I cannot thank them enough for sponsoring this episode. And last, but certainly not least, this episode is sponsored by our friends over at Promo West Productions. Now, over the last 2 years, I've gotten to tell you about a lot of cool concerts that happen here in Columbus. And this episode, well, yeah, you guessed it. I'm telling you again, it's happening one more time because I've got some new shows to tell you all about. So if you live in or around the Columbus, Ohio area and you're interested in checking out a live show, getting that live music experience, well, then you may want to check out one of these upcoming concerts that are coming your way via Promo West. They've got Orville Peck at Kemba Live on June 3rd. Sugar Hill Gang comes to Newport Music Hall on June 7th. The Mars Volta comes to Kemba Live on June 12th. And then Brothers Osborne at Kemba Live on June 13th. So, if you want to grab tickets to any of those shows, well, all you got to do is jump over to AXS.com, or, as always, for more information on these or any other upcoming concerts, if you want to know who's coming to town and when, well, you can find all that info that you need over at PromoWestLive.com, or you can follow them at PromoWestLive. All right, a big thank you to all the sponsors for this episode. That's Fuzz Nail Salon, Midwest Photo, and Promo West Productions. If you heard something interesting in there, well, be sure to take a moment and go check them out. But right now, it's time to get to know somebody a whole lot better. So pull up a seat, buckle in, grab your favorite possum in honor of Meemaw for this episode, and toss in those headphones. This is episode 110 of What You Don't Hear, and my conversation with Hannah Rones.
So yeah, I'm so excited.
Hannah, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I am so happy that you were down to do this.
Hell yeah.
I am very excited to we've built a friendship now. We've had like the long conversations about all these random things, but never kind of in this way before.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like there's a lot about you that I don't totally know.
You'll know everything after today.
Yes. What better platform than right here? It's the cheat code. It's the cheat code to become better friends.
That's so smart. I'm going to start a podcast to just do this.
I literally say that all the time to people. I'm like, because like, there's so many times either I have a friend on who I already kind of know, but then it's like, well, we've never really talked about like everything about you, and sometimes you can't sit down for coffee and be like, so what was childhood like?
Yeah,
like,
wow.
Most of the time, we're kind of trailing off into like, yeah, so I want to do this idea, and that like, there's tons of other stuff, right?
Yeah.
Or if it's somebody that I have never met, there's no better way than like the formality of like,
get to know them.
Hey, cool. You know, you're here for me to ask you questions about you. So we don't have to like dance around like, where can we go? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I all the time will call doing a podcast a cheat code to make friends.
That's really smart.
If you do want more friends, just start a podcast.
That's a big commitment, I feel, but I'm taking note of it now. Well, I also feel like it's perfect because like sometimes you're friends with somebody and you're like, crap, like I don't really remember all their siblings' names, and now we've been friends for like 8 years, and like I can no longer ask. So what a perfect excuse to be like, so for the people that don't know listening at home,
always the excuse.
What are your siblings' names again?
Yeah. So on that note, hey, for the people who don't know, could you introduce your name to everybody? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very sad. So you want me to do this now?
Like this.
Yeah.
I am very, very stoked though to get to sit down and have this conversation with you. And it's funny because I kind of don't know where to start because we have talked about just so many different things in only the couple times that we have actually gotten to hang out.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've seen you more like at shows.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think we've only really sat down for like coffee or something like what, twice?
I think so, yeah. But I feel like you and I have very similar like creative mindsets on like how we approach things.
Yeah.
And so I feel like whenever we do meet, I'm like, yes, I understand. You know, like I'm like, I know where you're coming from. You know, like I completely. So I feel like it's a really kind of one of those cool friendships where I'm like, oh, I know kind of like Ross is busy doing his thing, but I always love checking in and like seeing what your projects are doing or like where you want to go and all of that kind of stuff.
That's why I'm always excited whenever we do get to sit down for the exact same reasons, because I'm like, okay, I want to know like what ideas Hannah is sitting on or like what new plans she has. Like it's that exact same thing. And I think what's fun is as we make this podcast about how cool our friendship is, I love that we don't really, I feel like you and I never really have to do the random chatter of like, so how has work been?
Yeah.
And then we get to something. Usually we sit down and one of us is like, so I was working on this thing the other day and this is what happened. And then we're like, really? Tell me more about that. And then did you ever think about this? And like,
man,
then I feel like we just take this like deep dive and then it's 4 hours later and the coffee shop is closing.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, it's time to go.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But I think like it's really good to have somebody like that you can be like, okay, I'm going to rant about like the creative process or like things that like get on my nerves a little bit or like if I feel blocked or something. So that's cool.
Yes.
I also am like not very good at texting back ever. And so like I cannot do the friendships I think anymore. That's like a random check-in. I'm very bad at it. I want to get better at it, but it's just how I am.
Right.
So.
Just remembering to follow up with the text and stuff like that.
So
I also have to say, it would be wrong to not give credit to Terrence.
Yeah.
For this friendship even existing.
Yeah, it's true.
As we talk
my
about
God.
us being friends here in this podcast.
Yeah.
He introed us a handful of months ago, and he was like, I don't know how you guys don't know each other yet, but you absolutely should. And hey, Terrence, you were 100% correct.
Thank you, Terrence.
Because look at us now.
Look at us.
On a podcast.
We did it.
So I do kind of want to just like open up the floodgates of just all things Hannah.
Yeah.
Because the Hannah that I know, the Hannah that I was introduced to from Terrence, right? I know comedian Hannah.
Yeah.
I had heard your name around a bunch. I believe I had seen you on some shows before we ever actually met. I had definitely seen you online, like, because I feel like you're just involved in like every, from like the stand-up world to the improv world and everything in between. You've got these like ties to all of it. So I would always see your name. So I was stoked when we finally got to sit down and meet. But I also only know like current day Hannah. I have no idea of how any of this stuff started. So like, I guess, honestly, let's just start at the beginning. Did you grow up in Columbus or Ohio or where?
Yeah,
Take me back.
I was born on a dark and stormy night. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll add in some sound effects right here.
Please, thank you. Yeah. No, so I was hatched, actually.
Perfect.
So I'm from the like Akron, Cleveland area originally, like in a smaller town near Akron. And I came down to Columbus for school to go to Ohio State. I did the regional campus route at OSU where you can go to a regional campus for a year and then go to the main campus. So I was at Mansfield for a little bit, served my time, came to main campus in Columbus, and then I graduated and just never left. I stayed here for work, and then I got involved in the comedy scene, and now I work remotely for my day job, so I could technically probably move like wherever I want, but I love Columbus. I think like the comedy scene has been so great here, and there's so many different opportunities that it's like I don't feel like I can leave yet, like I just feel like I want to see where everything can go here. You know?
That would be a wild moment if you were like, and so I'm leaving. I'm leaving it all behind, and everything we're about to talk about doesn't matter because I'm fucking out of here. Like, So what's growing up in Akron, Cleveland area like? Yeah,
it's so I grew up in a small town, and we had like 300 or 400 people in my graduating like high school class. It was pretty small, really like conservative, very like monochromatic, like monolithic, I guess, like also kind of both, like hometown, and so coming to like Columbus and going to school, it was like really exciting to make so many different friends from like different backgrounds than me and like have opportunities for like different creative projects that I never really had exposure to in school. And I was in like speech and debate and like drama club and stuff, and so I already had like some experience performing, and I was always like the grandma character in the school plays and like the comedic relief. And so I always like knew that that's kind of like that was my vibe, that's what I loved to do. And so then I came to OSU. I lived in Columbus, and I started wanting to get more involved in like comedy stuff. So I tried out for some stuff in at like college. I didn't get in, and it actually encouraged me to look into opportunities in the community in Columbus, which is what happened. But as far as growing up in like a small town in Ohio, I mean, like, I don't know, man. It's like there's a lot of corn and like soybeans and like, you know, it was cool, but it's also very like a sheltering experience, I think, too. And being able to like expand beyond that was really eye-opening for me, which is great. And I really am glad that I've been able to like meet so many like and build different friendships from people with different backgrounds and kind of expose myself to different like worldviews that I didn't really get coming from like a very like evangelical like small town, you know?
Yeah. I feel like I can relate in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm from a super small Ohio town where like I always kind of felt like I was in a bubble, but you don't know you're in the bubble until you leave the bubble. And then you're like, oh, this is how much of a bubble it was. This is like how everybody thinks there. And I'm not even saying super bad or negative necessarily. It's just very fixed mindset in like, this is just how things are. And what do you mean you want to go do this as your career? You're supposed to get a job and then do that for fun on the side. Like that kind of very, again, fixed mindset. I didn't realize that until you get out of the bubble and you look back and you're like, oh, wait, okay, maybe even if it wasn't terrible, it's still very stuck in a certain way.
Yeah, I agree. And I have a lot of friends that are still like living there. And I think that it's every time I go back there, I'm always really excited about like how things have like been progressing forward and trying to get more like comedy things happening near my hometown is something I'm kind of passionate about because I want to have more opportunity for like people like me that can kind of like grow in that creative community there. But it's definitely kind of like, it is a little, I think, limiting, but I see also like how attractive it is. Like it's really hard to like try to push yourself outside of like those realms. And it took me a very long time to like understand how, you know, not everybody has like the exact same experience as you do. And when you're in a small town where everybody looks like they probably have had the same experience, even though they definitely haven't, it's a lot easier to be like, this is just how everybody is, you know? And so it's exactly that thing where it's like, you're in a bubble, but it's like, at the same time, you're also not really learning as much about people as you could because you just assume a lot of people have the same experience as you do. You know, and there's a lot of diversity and like experiences in those small towns that people don't really know about, I think, too, which is crazy. But a lot of people don't talk about it either. It's a very hush hush.
No, that's like, I have this like, I say secret as in just like, I just don't tell anybody about it. It's not really a secret, but like, I have this like whole plan / like, I don't know, I guess dream of like helping kind of rebuild my hometown in a way and not making it some like amazing town to go to, but like I kind of like you were saying of like, I'd like to introduce some comedy into areas around my hometown and stuff like that of like, that's kind of what I want to do with mine is like, I want to introduce them to just more than just, it doesn't have to be just like go to work, go home, get wasted, watch football, eat pizza, and then wake up and do the exact same thing the next day. I know introducing a bit of like arts and entertainment to a town is not going to change everything. But like, I feel like there's cool ways that small towns can kind of own their like, hey, we're a quaint little small town. And maybe it doesn't have to be like dirty alleyways everywhere, but like there could be some cool small town things here because cool small towns do exist. And so I'm in a similar thing where I've been kind of like over the years actively brainstorming where I'm like, is there anything that like now that the things that I've learned and the networks that I'm within and all this sort of stuff, I'm like, how could I take that and like give back to my hometown in a way? Not that anyone's asking for that or even needs it necessarily, but I'm like, it could be a little bit cooler, right? I'm not trying to change the game. I'm not going to pretend like my hometown is going to be like a destination for people. It's not. The center of town is a Circle K. Like that's it, right? But I'm like, how can I make, like, I wish I could help make it more desirable or just a cooler place for the people that are there. To where it's not just like, this is our dirty hometown and we don't care, because that's kind of the vibe that I get. You know, like when I go home to visit, I feel like I'm visiting a different planet. Personally. And I don't mean that as in I hate it. I just explained a whole thing of like how I want to help it. Like, but when I go back, I'm like, I'm on an entirely different planet. like completely different people, completely different, like what is going on. And I think it is kind of like you were explaining, like the diversity and experiencing that other people have lives and ways of living life, and it's not just, again, the same 5 steps over and over. But that's a whole other, thanks for coming to our TED Talk about small towns.
I do think like one of the things that I love about growing up in a small town was like the ability to kind of like try out new things. And my parents were always really supportive of stuff. And there were little like, there was like a little open mic in a coffee shop in my hometown, like every Wednesday. And I'd always go there, and like all my friends would do like all this different music and be so cool. And there's so much like talent that, you know, just needs a place to go. I
got my hometown beat.
You know, and so I don't know. Yeah, well, I don't know. It's a probably bigger small town. But yeah, so we can stop ranting about small towns. But I love it. And if any of my friends from my hometown are watching, I love you all. You're wonderful.
Same, yes. And you can soon vote for both of us for mayor. For both of your
hometowns. Both of them respectively.
We are now the mayors of your hometown.
The following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ross. Yes, the Ross from this very show that you're listening to right now. But this is an ad version of me because I'm interrupting this program to tell you all about something else that I do that I want you to know about. And that is my other podcast called Whose Life Is It Anyway? It's half an improv comedy podcast, half a game show, and well, full nonsense. So I want you to pretend like the life story that you're hearing right now in this episode of What You Don't Hear. Imagine if it was being completely made up as we went and was filled with, well, some pretty outrageous details.
You started losing it. I'm like,
that's a boner, pal.
I buzz it when you lose, right?
So I want your guys' show to take place within the universe of Harry Potter. This is a podcast that takes place inside the Marvel universe. And I knew I was going to meet my fate. But one day, after all the children I've killed, I had no choice. Change.
She sings, "What you gonna do with all that junk? All that junk inside that trunk?"
Well, that is Whose Life Is It Anyway? Where in each episode, myself and 2 different guests sit down to make up a fake podcast interview with one of us in charge of the story using different improv games and guidelines to move the interview along. Oh, and this is an improv show where the points do matter. So if you're looking for something maybe a little less serious and way more funny and even crude at times, well, I've got the show for you. You can find it on social by following @Who'sLifePod, or of course, you can listen to it or watch it on whatever platform you're currently checking this show out on right now. But for now, let's get back to the show. Something that you mentioned, like even when you were young, you were always like one of the funny kids that would play the grandma in the plays or whatever. Yeah. What was being the funny kid for you? Was that just like the natural like, I'm funny, or was it the opposite of like, and I ask that because I often hear people will be like, this was kind of my go-to because I didn't know how else I fit in and I had to find something. Like,
interesting.
What was it for you? Was it just like, dude, I was funny and I just started being funny, like, or was it something else?
I don't think I'm funny, and I don't think I ever thought I was funny.
Okay.
But one time my drama teacher told me, like, after I was playing this like grandma for the 4th time probably in like school plays, she's like, you have good comedic timing, like you really know how to like deliver these lines. And like I was improvising a little bit sometimes too, and that was kind of like a spark moment for me where I was like, oh, that's where I can go. But as far as like outside of like the plays, I was actually like really, really quiet. Like I was always the kid that was like, Hannah's a pleasure to have in class, but very quiet. Mm-hmm. But I think like towards like high school, I kind of got a little bit out of my shell and like was trying to like be a little bit more like outgoing. And I'd always hop around from friend groups too, like throughout like elementary school to high school. So I think I got to know a lot of different like people that way, which was I think good. But looking back, it's like I always kind of like would have loved to have one of those like groups of friends that's like people have friends from like kindergarten and they're like still friends in their 30s or 40s, right? Like I don't think that I have friends from my high school days that I'm still really close with and I really cherish all those friendships, but like nothing like 3rd or 4th grade or something.
We're a family. We've been a family forever.
Yeah, like, exactly. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but I think as far as like the being like the quieter kid, I don't know. I think like my parents kind of like really helped me out because they would always tell me like, don't care what other people like think of you. And I really like took that and ran with it. And I think even now, like, I think that's why improv was such a natural step for me was because like, improv is really, I think, just like letting that judgmental part of your brain kind of like remove itself and really just like being your authentic self and like kind of going along with that creative, imaginative side of you that as adults we kind of lose. And I think that like I had a big part of that as a kid still, because like I was really encouraged to like play, like pretend, and like I loved like playing with dolls and like all of these things that just like helped me build like storylines and like plots and things. And so I think it all, like looking back, it all totally makes sense. But in the moment I was just doing things that I liked, but I was never like the class clown. I was, that kind of thing.
Right.
But were you the class clown or anything?
So you and I are very similar in the sense of like, I didn't start coming out of my shell until I actually literally, I'm not even joking, until last week. So it's a shocker that we met before then. Yeah. I don't know what's been going on. But I literally remember the moment. Like, it's ingrained in my brain.
Yeah.
I probably told this story in the show before, so I'll make it quick. But, like, I was in 6th grade. I had a 6th grade teacher, Mr. Boffman. I think he listens to this show. So if you listen to this one, there's another thank you to you. He was just so energetic in his class. He was always making jokes. He made it fun to be at school.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like, and today we're going to learn. Like, he would make jokes. He would do dumb voices. Like, he was a character, right? And so because of that, he invoked that as the environment, right? It was like, hey, we all can kind of be silly if we want to be, right? And literally I remember one day, again, because he encourages it, like I answered a question doing a stupid, like a silly voice.
Yeah.
And like it got a little laugh in the class. And I'm like, oh, now I'm in. Like, we're doing it, right? And I literally like distinctly remember like that being the moment where like the shell kind of came off.
Wow.
And then it wasn't like 0 to 100 after that, but it was like, oh, okay, cool. Now I can creep out a little bit more, right? Of like a little bit further, take another step out of like, okay, I can be funny and I'm okay with having some attention on me. And because up until then, like you said, I was the quiet kid.
Yeah.
I was super quiet. Doesn't mean I didn't have friends or didn't laugh or have fun, but it was very much, hey, pleasure to have in class, whatever, very quiet, just to myself.
Copy and paste.
Yeah. And so like I distinctly remember like that kind of being the thing. And then from there, it kind of became the, okay, cool. Now, and also the more you grow up, the more you're like, oh, okay, I'm learning a little bit more of who I am or finding my friends group. And we're all kind of joking and all that sort of stuff, right? And I never really turned into the class clown, though. I was never that kid. Like at least in a circumstance like that, like I have too much respect for like rules that need to be in place.
I was literally about to say the same thing though.
Yeah. Like, and not that, which is weird because now, like, if we went on a whole tirade of like what it means to follow rules an adult, I'm like, fuck the system, fuck everything. I'm not doing what you tell me to do.
But as a kid,
but there's like, I feel like for me, there's a difference between like following rules and showing respect.
Yeah, that's fair.
I can sit and be like, I don't like rules. I don't like authority. I do not like people being in charge of me. I really, really don't.
Yeah.
But when that is there, I can respect that when it's needed, right? So in school, I could identify like, oh man, this sucks. I don't like school, whatever. But I'm not looking to be like the disruptive kid in class or the loudest kid in class to get the attention. Right. It was, I'm going to be quiet to myself and blah, blah, blah. But when the opportunity actually presents itself appropriately, cool, we'll have some fun, we'll be silly, we'll whatever. But I was never the like, let me get in trouble, let me break rules, haha, F this. Like, I was calm and respectful in that sense, but would joke around while being calm and respectful.
You were still a pleasure in class.
I was still the pleasure.
You were still a pleasure.
Yeah, he's getting louder, but still a pleasure in class. Yes. Getting funnier also. Make note of this. Probably we'll have a podcast one day, stop him now. So something that I would also like love to know is like, did comedy, like fandom of comedy or interest in comedy show up early on, or is that a way later thing?
Yeah, actually, when I was born, it was a Norm Macdonald tape that was playing. No, I'm just kidding. Wouldn't that be crazy?
That would be amazing.
Oh my God, I wish. I would say like I started listening to stand-up kind of like on my own. Like growing up, we watched like not a lot of like comedy or like SNL. I would watch SNL every once in a while as a kid, but I think like stand-up comedy was kind of like my first thing that I really fell into as far as like comedy goes. And it was kind of happening in like late high school, like college, when I was like having an office job, and I discovered on Pandora you could just play comedians, and so it would like reference a lot of different new comedian tracks for you. And so I really like dove right in and just listened to that more than music. And that was probably the first thing that I was really into with comedy more than anything else, was just stand up. And then from improv, I kind of didn't really know that much about improv until college, when I auditioned for an improv group, because I was like, oh, I kind of like get an idea about it. But
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I was like, oh, I've been doing improv a lot. This is actually what improv is. Like, I didn't realize like it's an art form, you know?
Right,
Like I was kind
right.
of just like, oh, I've been improvising in plays because I forget my lines, you know? Like,
Yeah,
so-
yeah. Did you have a different like first love or dream before comedy? Like, was there something else that you were like,
think,
this
like-
is what I want to grow up and do?
I think I really wanted to be like an actor or like
Okay.
like, you know what I mean? But I think like a lot of kids want to do that because you were watching like Disney Channel, you
Of
know?
course, yeah.
So I think like that's probably what I wanted. But other than that, not really. Like I always actually like had a big struggle. Like I was undecided when I went to college. Like I never really knew what I wanted to do. And like now I do marketing for my day job, which I like the creative like challenge that has, which I think is why I leaned towards marketing. But as far as like another dream, like no, I don't think I ever either also like dreamed of like necessarily being like the like housewife or like, you know, like have a bunch of kids and stay at home. Like I'd like to have kids probably, but like it was never like this is like my goal in life. Like I've always wanted to
Yeah.
do something more like creative or like a professional kind of thing, but I didn't really know what that was. And I just kind of followed this track of doing things that I enjoy and kind of from there built this path out for me. And now like I kind of see it forming, but it was only from following little tiny things that I liked doing and just like always listening to myself. And I think that's really what helped me kind of like understand, oh, this is kind of like where my lane is, you know?
Do you feel like a lot of that being able to follow your actual interests, like do you feel like that was ingrained early from parents, like kind of like you mentioned earlier of like, hey,
Yeah.
don't worry about what other people think? And
Yeah, I think so. And like I mean like whatever weird thing like I wanted to do, my parents were always like super supportive of it, which I think was like super cool. And so like if I wanted to like do a weird like make some like weird backpack out of duct tape, my dad was like, oh, that's awesome, yeah, you should totally do it. And like obviously like that's like looking back I'm like that was weird probably for me to do that, you know? Or like different like styles I had, like we always shopped at like Goodwill growing up, which wasn't as cool as it is now. And so kind of like owning that and being like, oh, like this is like my style, and my style is like kind of 80s look, and I still kind of love the 80s looks. And so like it's kind of one of those things where that also just like formed with everything in my life, where I just kind of listened to what I liked and I tried to do those things. So it was never like really too worried about like being self-conscious. And I don't think like I have been very self-conscious about things. I mean, everybody gets insecure and like jealous. And I think that like recently I deleted social media off my phone, which has been a big help with that. And I think like, in general, though, if you're just focusing on your own stuff, you're going to be so much happier and like know where your path is going to go a lot quicker.
yeah.
Yeah.
You might have just touched on this a little bit, but has there been a moment in time where that thought process like started to not work, where you were like second guessing, like, wow, no, I am kind of comparing myself a little bit, and maybe I shouldn't give this a shot, and kind of that imposter syndrome kicks in.
Yeah.
Like, has that popped up, or have you kind of had that foundation of like, and I don't mean in a perfect way, like you've never worried about anything.
Yeah, I think I'm perfect and flawless, and I've never heard that otherwise.
But
No.
like, has there ever been like that big like contentious moment of like,
Yeah.
you know what, I've had a pretty good track record of just doing things that I want to do, but now I'm not sure if that's making sense right now. Like I don't.
Yeah, I think like, yes, I have completely like felt like imposter syndrome, I think, with a lot of things. And like, I think with like seeing how other people rise to like where they want to be, like their level of success, it's really easy to like, I don't know if anybody else does this, like for example, but like whenever you see like a celebrity, you're like, how old are they? How old were they when they started their career? I do that chronically, like all the time. And like it got to a point where I was like doing it so much, and especially for like women, I think it's really hard because like you're fighting the clock as far as like at what age am I going to no longer be like cool or like be hip, and there's like a lot of, I think, insecurities that can kind of lead to. And I've talked to Terrence about this actually quite a bit too, is just like the comparison game with like other people. And it's definitely like insidious, and everybody experiences it. And I think that that's where I've ever had those doubts, where I'm like, I have a certain way that I like to do things, and like things that I think bring me joy. And I always have been trying to go back to that in my life. But it's a lot easier to see like your path and see how long it's taking you compared to like somebody else who might get there quicker, or like just like, you know, rise up so fast. And it's like, darn, like maybe like this isn't the route for me, you know, because I'm seeing what they're doing. But then I remind myself, and I mean, like, this isn't like a completely clean process. I mean, this is like months and months of me thinking about this and ruminating over like, why am I not good enough? Why am I not like, I'm not thin enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not whatever enough, you know?
Absolutely.
And so like, I think it kind of gets to that point where you have to also like take a step back and be like, but I'm also like not them. And like, I'm also like X, Y, and Z. And like all of the failures, or like not even failures, but like lessons I've had to learn, or like things I've had to overcome have helped me get to the point that I am. And I'm very happy for these people that have like made it their way. And I'm sure that they have had so many different struggles too that like we don't know about, right? And so like I can't even say like, oh, it's so simple for them, because I don't know. Right. And so at the same way, like just being thankful for like where I've gotten and looking at like if it wasn't for like X, Y, and Z, I wouldn't be who I am, and kind of just reminding myself of that. And so I think it's like a very difficult thing to remember, and lots of the times I fall short in like doing the mental gymnastics it takes. Also, I'm not crying. I'm getting over like some allergies. So
no, she's crying. If you're not watching, this is a really dramatic episode.
I'm crying a lot right now.
She is crying. This is great. This is good for promo.
But this guy can do it. Do you have any onions? But
actually, yes, I keep a bag of onions under the table in case my guests don't cry for the episodes. I'm like, hey, could you just rub these in your eyes real quick? Because I need some good highlights for the video.
For those listening, Ross has been cutting onions this entire time.
And so anyway,
yes, anyways, what were you saying? We're making guacamole after this, but so I think like actually Terrence and I were having a good conversation about like how a lot of female comics, and some female comic who's famous has said this before, but I can't remember who it was, but she basically said how like male comics are able to have different genres. Like they can be the storytelling comic, the dad jokes comic, the X, Y, and Z, and all female comics, you can just be the female comic. And in the sense of like, you can only have one style. Like a booker will look at like a set list and they'll be like, okay, I got like the storytelling comic, I got the blue comic, and all of these are guys, and then I've got the woman comic, and then I've got the, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of one of those things where like I think also women are kind of like told, or not really told, but like we're conditioned to compare ourselves, like to almost like compete with each other, because like in a way that men don't have to compete if they're just all men on the set list. I feel like women are like fighting for that one female comic spot. And so I think that also like festers this like comparison and all of these things that we're talking about.
Yeah. That 100% makes sense. And even on the note of comparison too, is like jealousy is like ingrained in our DNA, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sure a caveman somewhere years ago was like,
For
bigger
sure.
rock, upset. But it's like balancing that, and something you were saying earlier is like it's hard to not compare yourself. No one can never not compare themselves. If someone is like, I never compare myself to anybody, you're lying. You're lying.
You're lying.
Even if you don't
and
do
I'm
it
better
that
than
much.
You.
You're lying, and I don't lie, and I'm better than you. But it's like the hard part with that is remembering that like what we're seeing often is like the end result of someone else's work.
Exactly.
And we know every terrible day we've had and every failure, and we have no idea of most of their failures. So we're comparing, wow, it's taken me X amount of time and X amount of failures to get to where I'm at, and I'm not where they're at. And it's like, I mean, yeah, sometimes people just kind of get handed something that that can happen. But like most of the time it's like, but we don't know all the hard parts that they also had. And so it's I try to like bury that in my mind as much as I can, of like when I do see something I'm like, why don't I have, that's so stupid. It's like, well, they did some sort of work to get themselves there, even for that opportunity to show up. Even if that opportunity was quote unquote given to them, they did something to get themselves in the right place at the right time around the right people to make that happen. And that's like, I used to do this a lot back when I did photography, like a lot more, and I did like live music photography. I realized early on I didn't like touring. I don't like to do that. So even though I didn't like to do that, I would still see a lot of other touring photographers and be jealous that they were like doing these cool shows and all these cool tours. And I literally had to keep reminding myself like, dude, you're jealous of something you don't even want. You don't want that. Like, sure, there can be like the natural envy of like, oh, that's a cool show. I can't believe they got to do the film that artist or whatever. Like, that's so cool. That's okay. Whatever. But like, I can't be jealous of them doing something that I literally do not want to do the work to make happen. Like, why would I then sit and ruminate on that and be like, well, why don't I get that tour offer? Because if you did, you would probably say no.
Yeah.
Or if you did go and do that tour, you'd be like secretly kind of unhappy the entire time. You wouldn't even want to be there.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why am I comparing to something that I don't even want? And I think a lot of the times that is kind of comparison.
Yeah.
Like you almost kind of like reeling yourself in to be like, wait, what am I comparing to? Am I excited that they got some success and I would just like success in my field? Am I excited that they have some attention and I wish I had some attention in my field? Or what is it actually that we're jealous of?
Yeah.
Because usually there's like an obtainable way for us to probably get there if we really broke it down that many steps, right? Because there's a lot of times like I could sit and be like, oh man, a TikToker is making funny TikToks and now they're known as this like fun comedian or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I'm jealous of that. Why can't I get that attention? Well, guess why I'm not getting that attention? Because I don't give a fuck to make TikToks and reels.
Right.
But, you know, it's like I don't want to do the work, time, and energy to make funny reels and TikToks to promote something I want to promote. I do not like doing that. That person does.
Yeah.
So, okay, they reap the benefit of doing that. So why would I be jealous and why would I compare myself?
Yeah.
We are operating in two different things. But what they have is attention for their comedy. Okay, that's what I want more of.
Right.
So how in my lane can I find how to get there?
Yeah, I think like that's something too that's like a really interesting point is I think also being like a very weird person, a very awkward person as myself. I think like
it'd be funny if like so fucking awkward and weird like you are and you're super fucking strange. So like being a fucking weirdo like you, like I think
in a pleasure to have in class. Super fucking awkward.
Super fucking weird. Probably not gonna
so
make
bizarre.
TikToks one day. Piece of shit.
Really makes me uncomfortable. Bizarro kid. Pleasure to have in class. But yeah, so like I was gonna say, but yeah, I think like that's something too where I've just had to like lean into and just be like, okay, listen, Hannah, like you are a little weirdo, you know, like, and that's okay. That's what we love about ourselves, you know. It's like you gotta lean into it and you gotta be like, okay, yes, this person is probably like a little bit less awkward, a little bit more easy to digest, a little less like strange, and that's okay and that's good, you know. And I'm very proud of them because I have tried my life to try to be like that and I can just not, right?
Exactly.
And so like I think at the same time it's like leaning into like who I am genuinely is also really helpful because you're like, oh, like if I find people that like my style of humor, I know that at least it's like genuine to me and I'm not like watering myself down or like, I'm not saying that other people do that. I think other people are like genuine and just happen to be a little bit more like mainstream or less weird, you know, and in like a very good way. I mean, that is a very big compliment. Yeah, I think like it's important to just like be true to yourself and then hopefully, you know, maybe you'll find a following or maybe you won't or maybe people will find you funny or maybe they won't. But I always remind myself, I'm like, as long as I think I'm funny or as long as I think the joke I'm saying is funny, at least one person in the room is laughing, you know?
Yeah.
At least I'm guaranteed of that because otherwise like there's so many times where I've tried to write jokes that I think will appeal to the audience and it's like sometimes it works and sometimes the audience finds it funny, but I don't find it funny and I feel really dissatisfied with it. Yep. And then it's like, or they don't find it funny and I'm like, wow, they didn't find it funny and I didn't find it funny. What a waste of my time. And like honestly, like am I even being true to myself? And so
exactly.
Yeah.
I in my opinion, I believe 10 out of 10 times being authentically you in whatever you're doing is always going to be the way to go and you're always going to feel better rather than putting on a facade.
Yeah.
Because how many stories have we all heard over the years of like somebody's super famous and then later on they're like, yeah, I had to fake my entire way through that and I was the most unhappy and depressed I've ever been in my entire life because I was acting as if I was this when really this was going on. And it's like that story, that's a tale as old as time, right? It's been told over and over. And so I'm in the exact same boat where it's like just whatever is authentic to you, lean into that. Because if you can enjoy doing it, it kind of matters less how many other people enjoy. Like if you enjoy making a style of comedy and you know put whatever those jokes are online or say at a show or whatever, and if it's not going viral because it's not super consumable to everybody in the world, guess what? Everything everyone does is not supposed to be consumable for everyone.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like it's not supposed to be, but like social media has now kind of conditioned everything of like you have to chase like the most amount of numbers and most amount of eyes, and it's like, dude, For what? So my comment section can be filled with arguments of people telling me I'm stupid because I like the thing they found me doing in the video.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? It's like inviting people into your house for them to be like, your decoration in here sucks ass. And it's like,
then they just leave.
I didn't decorate it for, I live here.
This is my house.
This is my house. What do you, like, thanks for coming over, but like, what the hell? Like,
I didn't even invite you.
Exactly. And it's like, I disagree with this idea that's kind of, and I think a lot of people are fighting against it now, but like, because it went so quickly from 0 to 100 of us learning,
1,000%.
because we're these silly humans who do not understand how to handle having all information at our fingertips at all points in time.
Yeah.
So it's like we don't understand how to navigate social media still, so that's why it's chaos.
Yeah.
It can be good if you know how to, if you can control it. But like, that's why I feel like everybody gets so caught up in, well, if I don't go viral, it's a failure. If I don't get X amount of downloads or streams or listens or whatever, it's a failure. And it's like, no. To who? Who is it a failure? I know you're telling yourself that, but comparatively to what? Yeah. And then why? Who cares? Right. Like, what do you enjoy about this? Like, I use this example all the time, but it's like, this show, sure, would I love for it to get 1 million downloads every episode? Sure, that sounds cool. Brings more opportunities for like sponsorships and whatever, right? Mm-hmm. However, I'm not worried about what it takes to get there. Like, I'm not worried about like, well, because like, every once in a while I'll get a random person who like will find out about this podcast, and like their question will be like, well, who's the most famous person you've had on? And I'm like, I don't know how to answer this to you in a way that you'll, and I don't mean this in a degrading way, but like, I don't know how to answer it in a way that you will understand. Yeah. Because my real answer to that is that fame is so like secondary. Like, I don't know what that means technically. Yeah. I'm not worried about that. Like, yes, I know. Sure, if I had Tom Hanks on the podcast, that's a famous person. Yeah. But the show, like, how do I explain that the show was never designed for that? Right. You know what I mean? It was designed for cool people who do cool things that I want to have conversations with, where they get to express their stories and themselves. Yeah. And they do something cool when we talk about it. So, like, I don't know how to answer the question of, like, oh, well, there hasn't really been a famous person, but it's kind of dependent on what you believe famous is. I guess you could look at how many followers some people have or what they do. And it's like, that doesn't matter. Right, yeah. It doesn't matter. And so I can't be upset. Mm-hmm. And why would I tie myself to, does this podcast get 1 million downloads every episode? I'm not even trying to get 1 million downloads every episode. Yeah. I want X amount that do listen to this. They come to it because they enjoy the show, the conversations, or the person that's the guest. Mm-hmm. So then I have an authentic audience. Yeah. They're here to listen to or to check somebody new out that they might not know or whatever. I want it all built off of authenticity. So in the same way that if you're telling jokes or creating content or whatever it is, I'm always on the side of do what you actually want to do. Yeah. And don't try to like do what you believe is successful for somebody else, because they might have found success doing the thing that they want to do, and that might not be what you want to do. Exactly. So we're comparing two different things here, technically. Right. Well,
I think something else too that you touched on is like, if you're having fun with something, I think the audience will like it a lot more. Like, especially with like live comedy, I see this a lot where like, if I'm just like having a blast, like I think it is contagious for like other people. Like that energy. People like to see other people having fun. And if the audience can pick up if you're not being authentic, and like they can pick up if you feel uncomfortable. And like I've seen stand-up comedians like at one mic like crush it, or at one show crush it, and then the other show I see them like kind of like tense up and not be themselves, and I'm like, I can tell that it's like they're telling the exact same jokes, but one, they're feeling themselves and they feel like what they're saying is funny, and then another show they're going through the motions and they're just like performing in like the truest sense of the word in a way that the audience can see. And so I think that's like a really big part of it too, is like knowing that you just have to have fun and enjoy what you're doing. It's also not sustainable. Like kind of what you were saying too, is like you're going to get burnt out if you're like always forcing yourself to do something that you don't necessarily want to do. And like for me, like I want to be a creator, whatever that looks like, whatever that means, for like the rest of my life. And so like I know that like if I'm like going like 1,000 miles a minute, like I'm going to get burnt out so quickly. And I think when I first started doing comedy, like I really was doing that, and it's definitely like the part of me that in high school was in like 5 different clubs or whatever, just like trying to get all the extracurriculars I could. But like I think now I've kind of understood like, oh, it's good to take breaks, and like even taking breaks or like having time away from your hobbies or your interests or your passions, like is all part of the creative process, and it's all important. It's all sustainable. Like if I'm only going to like open mics, and I think everyone should, like, you know, if you want to grind, if that's how you want to live your life as a stand-up comedian, I think you should go for it. But I also feel like for me personally, like when I was going to open mics every single night of the week, like I was like removing myself from like things in my life that I felt like made me a human, like my friendships, my relationships, like all of these things, like my other hobbies or my other interests. And it kind of got me like in this mindset of just like only doing comedy instead of just like living as a person. And I think what's really cool is like when you are still able to like be your authentic self and have these grounding things in your life that you still invest in, even if it takes you away from your, you know, your dream, and it maybe takes you longer to get there, or maybe you will never get there, at least you have a balance of something that makes you a human. So you're not like one of those people that you were saying is like looking back and like, yeah, I faked it all for like years and now I have nothing, basically, like no emotion, like no like real friends or anything like that. And so it's a very tough like realization I had that like a couple years ago, and it's really helped me like calm down about like feeling like I have to go 1,000 miles a minute, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
What was your like first actual step into the comedy world?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So my first like actual step performing outside of like being in drama club in high school was I tried out for a improv group actually at Ohio State, and I didn't get in. And I was really upset about it. Yeah.
Hope they're watching.
Yeah.
She's on a podcast and you're not.
Yeah, thanks. So I was really upset about that. And so I went to a local, they're called Columbus Unscripted. I don't know if they're still doing stuff or they're still active, but they were doing classes at the time. And so I took a couple classes. It was near my college apartment, and I just fell in love with improv. And that was kind of like the first step into like performing comedy outside of like a play. And I really, really enjoyed that. And from there, like, I also just want to say, like, I was very thankful for them too, because like I was a broke college kid and they just let me take these classes for free. It might be why they're not around anymore, honestly. You know, maybe they should have charged me, but like, but like without them, like I don't think I would have gotten to the point of like getting involved in the Columbus scene so early, and like kind of seeing that, because a lot of college students at Ohio State especially, they stay in that campus realm because it's so, you know, amazing. There's so many different things to do within that they never expand outside of Columbus. So that's something too I'm really excited about with like #comedy, is that we have a comedy club that's kind of close to campus. And so like we've had a couple people from like OSU like come to our shows or involved in our casts, and it just means a lot that like we can kind of like help build that bridge a little bit. And there's a little part of me that's really happy from like being a college kid that got involved in the community too.
Yeah, a little bit of like a full circle moment.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So you moved to Columbus for college.
Yeah.
What were you going to college for? I remember earlier you said you were kind of like undecided, but like what were you even thinking of venturing into?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I had so many different things. So like at one point I was like undecided, and then I was like, I'm gonna do maybe business because it's like safe, and that's what I ended up like doing. But I also, so I have a degree in psychology and I have a degree in marketing, so I have 2 different bachelors, and so it took me a little bit longer to finish. But like I had messed around with the idea of like business and like poli-sci, and like business and or like psychology and poli-sci, or like yeah, I think that was the main one, but there was a couple other things too. My dad's an engineer, and he was like trying to encourage me to be an engineer, because he's like, you know, well, when women are engineers, you know, they can make a lot of money. A lot of people need engineers that are women. But I hated math, so it was never an option, I think, for me.
There's math included in anything. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, exactly. No, absolutely not. I don't pay for anything at the checkout because it involves math. I just constantly stealing.
You were like, did you just add those numbers? I'm out.
Yeah, no thanks. I'm just going to take this and run.
This stuff with me.
Yeah, it's already in my bags. Yeah, I'm not allowed at any Trader Joe's anymore. Aldi doesn't care.
Aldi's for the people.
Yeah, Aldi's for the people, exactly. But yeah, so that was like. Oh, I forget where the conversation was going, or what the question was.
What you were kind of like navigating in college, of like where the interests were, and how none of it was, you know, like was the ultimate thing that like stuck with you, where you're like, I was like interested in like maybe like working at a museum at some point, or like I think the thing I liked about like poli-sci was like possibly being a lawyer and just talking in front of people, and I was like, oh, I can just like do this on stage every Friday and like not have to go get a lot of college debt and like be sad, you know, like, that'd be great. Cool. Right. So it was in that time frame then you try out for the improv group, that, you know, first one doesn't work, and then you find the ability to go and you get in those other classes for free and everything.
Yeah.
So what does, like, I guess in a general sense, like, what does life then begin to look like? Like, do you, like, how do you begin navigating yourself into the rest of the comedy world or the comedy scene, maybe here in Columbus at least?
Yeah, I can walk you through. So I was doing these improv classes through Unscripted, and then Columbus Unscripted, and I did still do some stuff on campus. Like, I think I was involved with the Sundial, which is a comedy magazine on campus that R.L. Stein actually was a part of. Goosebumps author.
That's cool.
Very cool. Did you know that he failed? I don't know if he failed, but like he was trying to be a comedy writer and it didn't go well for him. Though that's why he leaned into horror.
Okay.
Yeah, very kind of cool. So like, but anyway, so I was involved in that for like a very, very small moment. And then from there, so I still liked writing. I was writing things. I also did comic books when I was in high school a lot. So like, I always loved just that kind of creative stuff. But then from there, I went to Improv Meetup, which is something that happens every Thursday in Columbus. And that got me a little bit more involved meeting new people. I took some improv classes. Then I tried out for hashtag comedy company. And then I got in as a cast member. And this was like all over the span of like 3 years. And I would take 5-month breaks. And I always, I think, wanted to do stand up, but I never really knew how to get started. It always was very intimidating for me. And improv was like the perfect thing that kind of tied in my old like theater roots with like performing, doing comedy, like kind of just riffing. And so that I'm really glad I went kind of that way. And then after being part of hashtag for a few years, we're at like 20, I joined hashtag, I think in 2018, and then as a cast member, and then I started doing stand up, I think 3 years ago, maybe. And so that's at like, 3 years after being involved in improv regularly, I started doing stand-up. And I've been doing stand-up for 2 years-ish, 3 years. Yeah, that's like the rough timeline, I think.
And then tell me about like the growth within hashtag itself, of like going from a cast member to
co-owner,
being like one of the owners of it. Like what is that trajectory like?
Sure. So that was a really interesting thing, and that's something I always try to remind people is like, you really, especially like female comics, or female women, anything, like you always just need to ask, because like a dude is always asking, like a guy's always ask.
So I'm literally doing a dude thing right now. I'm like, sorry to interrupt you, but but that point though is like so much of what we're talking about, of like you being like a dude who's never afraid to ask, right?
Yeah.
I feel like you have to have a certain amount of ignorance to sometimes find a high level of success.
Yeah.
Because you're not afraid to ask. And that can be both a positive thing, but also a negative thing of like, somebody doesn't know when there's a stupid question or doesn't know when they are kind of being an asshole.
Yeah.
And so you're so ignorant that you can kind of fail upward.
Yeah,
right?
oh, absolutely. I think that's...
And so, sorry, I'm literally almost doing the thing that we're talking about right now. I'm interrupting you, but like you saying that, I immediately was like, yes, that point, 100%. So,
and I think there's a lot of other things with like a lot of like female performers or like women in like a lot of different industries, not just like the entertainment industry or comedy. It's like you feel a little bit like sheltered in trying to like, or like if you ask, it's going to like look 1,000 different ways. And I think guys, if they ask, it's like, oh, maybe that was a dumb question. But like, I think with women, it's like, oh, it was a dumb question. And also like, how dare you even think that you could get something like this? Like, I think there's like a lot of different layers to it. But anyways, so I joined hashtag as a cast member. And so I had only been a cast member for like, I think 2-3-ish year, 2 years maybe. And then I started asking if I could help with the marketing, because, I'm studying marketing and all these things. And so one of the co-founders and one of the owners at the time, Sarah Store, was so nice and letting me, she was doing all the marketing, let me come in and like do some of the marketing. And Kenny Greer, who was also doing marketing, was they were very welcoming, encouraging me of doing this. And so they were going to open up a comedy club, and so I was only like a marketing at that point. And then in 2020, they were going to open up a comedy club. And obviously, that couldn't happen because it's 2020, and so we like and literally announced this in like January of 2020, and then so at that point, it was kind of one of those things where I think a lot of people felt discouraged because we lost like the lease for the club that we were going to have, and it was like this whole thing. And so basically, like, I think a lot of the ownerships also had like different career shifts that they wanted to do, or like family commitments that came up. And so a lot of the ownership shifted in hashtag to the point where there were only, I think, 3 owners at that point, and previously there were like 5 or something, or 6. And so I actually had asked if I could be an owner because of my involvement with like the marketing, and during COVID, we were doing a little bit of classes. I was taking up more responsibility too, just to try to keep it running. And so from there, the other two owners now, Matt and Chris, and we all kind of just like talked amongst ourselves about like what hashtag would look like post-COVID, and something that we really wanted to do, and not that hashtag wasn't doing it before, but hashtag was mostly like an improv space. And Matt and I have done like stand-up at this point, and we were like, we kind of want to like do something that's more like more diversifying like our comedy like style, and being a hashtag comedy company, not just like hashtag improv company. And so that's where I got to a point where after COVID, we were like, we could just like open up our own space and like do like comedy shows of all different types. And that's kind of what led to us opening up the club in November of 2023.
Yeah, which is such a dope thing, because like it's exciting in general, right? But also like doing something like that, like in my brain, even though I'm so involved in all these different things, I'm still like, man, how does somebody go about getting a space to open a venue? Like, that's insane. You know what I mean? So like seeing that is just such a rad thing. So like something I do want to dive into is like, so over these handful of years that we kind of just covered of like becoming involved in hashtag, and then, you know, becoming part of the ownership at hashtag and all this sort of stuff. I ask this question often on this show, and usually, you know, the answer is immediately like, well, yeah, I want to fucking quit all the time. But I still ask it to know if there's like a particular time. Was there a particular time frame in any of this where you were like, damn, this shit is not working? Like, this is not going to work. And I don't just mean hashtag. I mean Hannah as a comedian in general. Were you ever like, maybe that engineering thing doesn't sound too bad and I'll joke around on the weekends?
Yeah.
Like, has there ever been that moment for you? Or have you kind of like, do you feel like you build a solid enough foundation of like, I'm me and I do things that I like to do, so it just kind of flowed?
It kind of works out. I think like, I mean, I feel like that's like something I feel every at least 4 to 6 months.
Of course, yes.
You know, like,
yes.
But I don't think that there was like ever a moment where we're like, oh, like the juice ain't worth the squeeze, you know? I think if anything, we were just thinking, okay, how do we like make it work for what we want to do? You know, like there's been other times where like we were thinking like, what size of a venue should we get, for example? Like, did we get one that's too big or too small, or like a lot of things where we're like kind of not sure about ourselves. And there have been a lot of different like roadblocks in the ways. I mean, like there's a lot of different opportunities that like I think that can come up that don't, or things I don't like know how to get or like ask. Like, for example, like I really want to get into like more like acting or like film, or like getting like touring gigs as a comedian. And like now that like I'm a co-owner of a club or a producer of shows, people really like think that you're only a performer or only a producer, and they don't think of you as a performer anymore.
Yeah.
And so like I'm getting less gigs as a stand-up comedian now, even though I think like my stand-up has like improved a lot over the last year or two because of like my position. And that's been really discouraging, I think, as like somebody who wants to be a performer probably more than anything else that I do. But at the same time, like I also understand that having a good business sense, and like, I'm not saying that I have the greatest business sense, but I'm trying here, you know? And I think like having these different opportunities and different ways that I can leverage other skills that I have or other strengths that I have will ultimately help me achieve a goal of like whatever it ends up being. If it's like me wanting to be a performer full time, like I think that having the opportunity to like help build a scene that like I want to see as a performer is like such an amazing opportunity. I'm so grateful that I'm even in this position to create a scene where I think that like at some point in Columbus, like we can be a name nationally for comedy, and being able to like be one of the basically like the second non-corporate like comedy club in Columbus. Like that's a really awesome opportunity to just like help create a culture for everybody, all the performers and the audience members and the producers that want to be in Columbus. So I think like there's definitely a lot of doubts, and there's definitely a lot of times where it's like I want to quit, but I remember that like anything that I do is still hopefully going to build to some goal. And as long as it's following the pattern of like something that I enjoy and something that brings me like happiness, and I see the greater purpose of it, it's all going to go towards whatever it needs to be. Like, and if I'm not meant to be like a full-time performer, but if I'm able to like help to grow the Columbus comedy scene and like help platform other performers that might not otherwise have gotten a chance to get the exposure they can. Like, I'm so happy that that's my mission, and I'm so happy that's what it ended up being. And so also just being open, maybe that's the improv brain, but like being open to those other possibilities too.
Yeah. Well, I think it's cool because it sounds like you're like, even whether it's intentional or not intentional, it's just sort of a subconscious setting or something. But it's like, I feel like you're always kind of keeping big picture in mind.
Yeah.
And I think that's what locks a lot of people into certain things, is they are kind of short-sighted, and you are kind of looking at like, what do I need to do right now to get this bit of success, to get an immediate gratification? Where, yes, we all want those things because those are all the steps that make up the larger gratification. But I feel like, at least what I'm hearing is like, you're keeping yourself open to knowing that delayed gratification will be there as long as we continue to do these steps, rather than once I do this one successful show, this thing will happen and we're set.
Yeah.
Or once I have this one conversation, this will happen and then I'm set. I feel like you, and maybe I'm super off, but like what I feel like I'm gathering is like, I feel like you're aware that like each new thing is like a milestone to the next thing, and you're aware of embracing that journey, rather than once I get this one success, I should be good. Wait, I'm not? What the hell?
Yeah.
Like, does that make sense?
I never try to put too much weight on any opportunity. Like, I will always like be dedicated and be there purposefully and like give it my all. But I'm never like, oh man, once I get booked here, this is it. This is the big time. Because I know that like really, what's that one saying? It's like success is like, or luck is like preparedness, and meets like opportunity or whatever, or something, preparation. And so like, that's kind of the thing where I'm just like, no matter what I do, I'm kind of just like throwing all these darts at the dartboard, and maybe I'll get a bullseye, but like if I'm not like, at least some more surface area on than the dartboard was taken up. Mm-hmm. And so like, and I think also just like trying to like understand that you have to enjoy the process. Like if you don't enjoy the process, you're not going to be able to get to anywhere that you want, and you're going to get burnt out. And so, I'm also like I think like trying to be like a lazy person, in the sense of like, I want to do things that make me happy, but put in like not a ton of effort constantly. And so for me to do that, I have to enjoy the little tasks and the big tasks. And I think reminding myself of the bigger picture always helps with all of that like motivation to do it. So yeah.
You said this earlier, and I'm curious to know like more of kind of your take on it. Like, what do you feel like the value is of just asking the question?
Yeah.
Like taking that opportunity to be like, hey, I want this thing, or hey, let me express interest in this thing. Can I get help, or what do I need to do to get there? Like making the opportunity for yourself. Like, what do you feel like the value is in that?
Yeah. So I watched this TED Talk about this lady who was like saying like, she had brought a lot of people together, and they basically all just like asked questions of like, I've always wanted to go on a cruise, but I don't have any money. Does anyone have a connection to like get me on a cruise? And somebody's like, yeah, actually my son-in-law is a director for like, a cruise line. We can put you on a cruise. And it was all of these beautiful stories of people asking and like actually vocalizing what they wanted. And it actually like was able to happen because of it. I think generally like I have a very not like Lord of the Flies mindset when it comes to people. I think that like people are like inherently generally I think good and want to help out. And I think if you give people the opportunity to help you, like sometimes people will take you up on it, and like the worst thing that they can say is no, but at least you're reminded of like how motivated you are to do something. And it's also like keeping yourself accountable if you bring it up to somebody else, because you're like, it's scary to like say you want to be a comedian, or that you want to be booked, or that you want to have gigs, or that you want to do all these things. It's scary to think that, but like once you say it and you're like, yeah, like maybe I do deserve this. And I mean, honestly too, it's like the amount of other people that get famous because they're just or get successful because they're willing to ask. Like it's just like the pros outweigh the cons so much that you really just have to force yourself out there to do it. Mm-hmm. And I always try to encourage people. Like if somebody ever like asks me for help, I'm always 1,000% down to help. And I always tell people like any information I know, like I don't know much, but I'm happy to share it with you. I'm happy to give any connections or resources I can give, because like that's what it's all about,
I feel like is a part of why I immediately, like the very first time you and I ever sat down to talk, I immediately was like, oh, we're friends. Because I do feel like, and not that there wasn't like a goal at the end of that meeting. It literally was just, let's get to know each other and talk, right? Yeah. So there wasn't like I need this or you need that.
Yeah.
But I got that sense where like you were so willing to share information and so willing. There was never like well, I mean, yeah, maybe this is how you do this thing. But it was like,
Yeah.
no, yeah, here, let me tell you this story about this thing. And so, like, from day one of us becoming friends, I immediately was like, wow, I don't even have anything to ask of Hannah, but I feel like if I did, I absolutely could in this moment. So, like,
I'm so happy to hear that.
I
That's
will
a lot.
attest to, I do think that you 100%
That's a lot.
have set yourself up in that position of, again, when you and I met, there was no specific result that we were looking for from that meetup. But had I had one, I would have had no fears at all of being like, hey, so I actually want some advice or your opinion on this. And I feel like you're very giving in that sense. Now, on that same note, as like somebody who is in the last, year and a half or whatever, has just, become a part of the comedy scene here in Columbus.
Okay, yeah, sure. I disagree with you, but yes, okay.
Of me becoming a part of it?
I feel like you've been you keep on like
I know
you
I do
discount this.
I do.
I feel like I mean you do a comedy podcast, you are involved in comedy, like whether or not you're going to an open mic every single night or whatever, you are involved in the comedy scene.
I'm trying to
you
get
cannot
better.
be like the first person to like turn down yourself and be your first no,
You're
like
correct. You're very
do not
correct.
be gatekeeping yourself, please. You are part of the comedy scene for however long you've been doing comedy.
Well, you know what? I need to hear that, and I thank you that you're positively reinforcing that, because as you know, at this point, you've gotten to know very quickly. I'm always like, well, like I'm kind of in it, but like I'm kind of okay. So as someone who's a seasoned veteran of the comedy scene here in
founder of Columbus Comedy, nobody laughed in Columbus until Ross joined.
Thank you. That is going on a t-shirt and the promo materials for all of these episodes from now on. Absolutely. Definitely the main highlight for this episode. But like, how do you feel? It's like I have just started to get more involved in general, like with the scene, right?
Yeah.
So I'm unfamiliar with past versions. I don't know what it used to be. I don't know how it's changed. I don't know how it's evolved.
Yeah.
What is the trajectory of the Columbus comedy scene now?
It's amazing. Yeah. It's the best. It's the best city for a comedy in the world, I think. And I'm only slightly kidding. So, so I think like so I have a couple different things that I can say, but I will just say, like, in general, I come from the improv scene for longer than I do the stand-up scene. So I cannot speak upon like anything that was happening in the stand-up scene previous to like 2021, 2022-ish. Okay. But I think as far as like the improv scene, everybody's always been very like team building and like very open to like working together. And so actually when I joined stand-up, it was like just on the cusp of like ending COVID. And so when I started doing stand-up, I was the only improviser in the stand-up scene. And so a lot of people only knew me as a stand-up. But they were like, I was getting compliments on my set that were like very improv-based things. Like I would sing during some jokes I had, or like I'd be very physical. And all of these things are very like big acting outs that like improv has taught me and I've been comfortable with because of improv. And so then I kind of encourage other people to like try to start doing stand-up with me. And now I think the stand-up scene, because of the improvisers, and I'm not saying like I'm the reason why improvisers have joined the stand-up scene by any means. Of course,
I am.
Yeah, right.
Say that,
you are. Yeah. Well, yeah. He's actually the grandfather of Columbus comedy here right now.
Thank you very much. Everyone salute at home right now. I would like you to salute me real quick.
Your hand on your heart.
Your hand on your heart and salute me at the same time.
And so, anyway, so like a lot of more like improvisers have joined the scene, and I think it's really helped create like this weird like team building, like collaborative spirit in the scene that I think, like, from speaking to people that were doing stand up before, the Columbus comedy scene has been known to be like a little dramatic, a little catty, and I think that is kind of like the lifeblood that needed to happen in the comedy scene to help it grow and build a strong foundation. And I think that like, I mean, I might just have my own, goggles on for this, but I think like 2020 was kind of like or after COVID was like a rebirth of the comedy scene and gave it a new opportunity to grow. And so I think looking forward, there's a lot of people that are really open to like collaborating. And I think a lot of either the people that were there pre-COVID, I think have also gotten a little bit more like open to this way and not being, I think, as like gatekeepy or feeling like they can be more collaborative, and we're all kind of like a team and trying to build this community. And that's kind of the vibe I've gotten overall. And I think that that's what it needs to create a strong comedy scene and give more people opportunities. And every single time somebody can get to a point where they are like touring or more popular outside of Columbus, it's going to help us all. And so it's like the rising tide like raises all ships kind of thing. I don't think anyone's competing, and I think that I've also gotten the vibe that that's what a lot of more people I think are coming to as well, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that's been, one of the coolest things that I have learned as I've, met and befriended more comedians of all different styles here in the city is like, it does feel like everyone is kind of intertwined. And now I'm sure and I understand that especially in the entertainment world of any shape, any shape and size, there's always going to be some cliques and always going to be some people who don't feel like they can talk to somebody else, whatever. That's normal. It's human nature. I get it.
Yeah.
But like having had so much experience in previous entertainment worlds like that I have with the music industry and the filmmaking world, so far, and again, like you said, I could be seeing this just through my own goggles of just maybe I got some blinders up.
Yeah.
But like entering the comedy world, I've never felt a more like welcomed, inclusive, connected, like entertainment based world where like the music scene, I feel like is always the exact opposite. I feel like if you are not best friends with the right manager of the right artist of the right thing, you don't get access to the thing that you need.
Yeah.
You don't get the opportunity and this person does, or you don't get paid well and this person does, or your band doesn't get on this tour because this one person doesn't think you're cool and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I understand that sort of gatekeeping can happen everywhere and all that sort of stuff. You're never going to get 100% away from it. But like, I spent the better half of almost 10 years navigating the music industry in different ways.
Yeah.
And I just felt like everything had a glass ceiling in some way where ultimately, again, for me and my individual story, it was just, I wasn't supposed to stay in the music industry forever.
Yeah.
There are other people. There's somebody who could sit down on this table right now and be like, I've worked in the music industry for 30 years and it's amazing. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I can acknowledge that for my individual story, the music industry was a portion. It was a chapter. Yeah. But within that chapter, though, I still was met with like so many different closed gates of people who were unwilling to open them. Or, like I said earlier, when you and I sat down and we started talking about comedy and interests of stuff, we might as well have been friends for 7 years already.
Yeah.
Because it was just a fluid conversation that we talked about everything. And there was never one part where if I asked you a question or anything like that, there was never a like, oh, it feels like she's withholding some information here, right?
Yeah.
None of that. For years in the music industry, that's the vibe.
That's tough. It's
always sort of like someone doesn't exactly want to tell you the name of that label rep they know just in case, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying to blast everybody's email out because then you're
ruining your own
you're ruining your own connections of like, oh, I gave your email out to 50 different people.
Yeah.
Of course, don't do that. But I feel like it leans a little bit more on the side of, no, I'm kind of here for me, and unless you're already my best friend or show me that you can be my best friend immediately, I'm not really going to lean into it. Yeah. And I feel like the filmmaking world, definitely less, for sure, not as negative in my opinion, but it's more so divided by niche and genre.
Makes sense.
Right? So where you would assume somewhat in the comedy world, it's like improvers are over here, stand-ups are over here, and yes, I'm sure there are examples of that. But I feel like the filmmaking world leans a little bit more into that, where it's less negative, it is more welcoming, and people are a little bit more willing to share information. But there's also such a lack of understanding from one niche to another sometimes, even though they're all doing the same thing. It's almost like they can't see something from someone else's point of view or put themselves in your shoes. So they're just like, well, why wouldn't you just film it like this? And it's like, because the reason I'm trying to film it is this. I'm not trying to film it so it looks cool. I'm trying to film it so the story is good.
Yeah.
That, the easy example I guess I can give is like, that I feel like is a disconnect that happens a lot in the filmmaking world.
Yeah.
Is someone can be so consumed with the tech side of cameras, they completely ignore the story side of what the camera is shooting.
Yeah.
And then somebody else on the opposite side is like, the settings don't matter, what we're doing does, right? And so then getting to the final layer of what I've at least experienced with the comedy world is I feel like it's just kind of everyone's so open and willing for everything. And it's just sort of like, oh, here's an improver who does stand-up, or here's a stand-up who wants to get more involved in improv. And then, hey, these people also like being in sketches, and they like doing sketch comedy, or like helping to write for this, or produce for this, or whatever. And so for me, becoming more involved in that world, and sure, maybe it also is just like I have experiences from the last one, so I know how to navigate this new world better. Sure, I'm sure that's a part of it. But I also feel like it's just I've never quite experienced a field of entertainment being as welcoming as quickly as I've experienced the comedy scene, at least here in Columbus, being. If all of that rant made sense.
No,
I feel like
did.
I threw out 100 different examples there. But
this is all, and I think that's like, thank you for sharing, because I think like I've also heard that from like other friends who do like comedy or like art, I guess, in other scenes. And I definitely think that obviously you're going to have gatekeepers no matter what. I mean, we still have gatekeepers in Columbus, right?
Yeah.
But like, I think that the only way to combat that is to like be as open as you can with like giving people opportunities and like being transparent, and hopefully that helps, especially right now, because the Columbus comedy scene, I mean, Columbus is one of the fastest growing cities like in the country. Like at some point our comedy scene will get to a point where like people are coming and they know about it. I mean, even at open mics, more people are coming from out of state than I've seen ever before to perform at Columbus open mics. And so that's great, because I'm like, great, maybe the word's getting out to other scenes now. And so I think like at some point, like it's going to get to where at least like, I mean, other Midwestern cities are, where people know about the comedy, and maybe there's, you know, talent agents that come through, or like people that are looking to like get people to, you know, go on shows or, you know, do other like touring gigs and things like this. But I think like right now, the biggest thing that we can do in the Columbus comedy scene is remove all this like gatekeeping and roadblocks for each other, because right now we're creating the culture that it's going to lay the foundation for everything else. And so what kind of foundation do you want to do in a comedy scene? You want to see exactly what you said, where like people are open to helping and open to like working together. And I think that's what Columbus comedy is like getting to. And I'm so grateful for it too. Like, I also just want to say, like, I've said a lot of things about like being a woman in comedy, and I do want to give a big shout out for a lot of the guys in the comedy scene that are so helpful and so like unproblematic, and like are such big allies too. Like I've never felt like unsafe, and if I have, I know that like a lot of the open mic hosts or my friends or whatever will have my back. And so I think like things like that, where it's just like people being mindful of other people's experiences, is huge. And so I'm really glad that you're saying that too, as as the godfather of Columbus comedy.
Yes, it has been. I saw where it began, and now to see where it's at, I'm very proud of everyone. Good job. You're making me proud. Thank you so much for following in my footsteps. It's the standard I set many years ago, and I ventured off into these other entertainment fields. But it has been cool to just kind of immediately, you know, and you know, anybody who has listened to, especially other episodes of the show where I've had other comedians on, I apologize because I've told versions of this story over and over, but, you know, like, again, I thanked, you know, Terrence earlier, and it's like I also have to thank Shayna, because, you know, Shayna was one of the very first people who also was, like, so encouraging of, like, you're funny and you have an interest in this, you can do it, and then when you do it, hey, you're involved now, guess what?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, she was one of the initial people who were like, you're a comedian.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I do funny stuff sometimes. And she was like, no, you are. And then you need to meet this person and that person. And it's like having people like that. And there's at this point, there's so many cool, supportive people that I could sit here and list for probably the next hour of like cool things that they've done.
Yeah.
And yourself included. And it's like all of that, again, it's just welcoming. That's the coolest thing. And never, you know, back in the day when I would go to like a local show, for example, with bands. And again, I'm not trying to make it sound like some terrible thing at all. But even when you would have friends there or something, everything was still kind of clicked. And it was like, oh, well, this person's going to stay backstage because they're too cool. And this person, you can hang out over here, but don't talk to this person because this person in this band doesn't like this band because they play different types of music and blah, blah. It was still like everyone was there, but not everyone was together.
Yeah.
Where I feel like my experience so far with comedy shows, whether it's improv shows or stand-up shows with open mics or anything like that, it's kind of like everyone, it's almost like, oh my gosh, we're all friends and we're all getting to do this fun thing together. I can't believe you're here. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like there hasn't been that, you know, the feeling, again, my personal experience in comparison to shows and concerts or whatever, like you would walk in and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to get to talk to my friend so-and-so because their other friend so-and-so is here tonight and that person's cooler than me in their eyes. So we're probably not going to get to hang out. Yeah. Where like anytime I've walked into a comedy show, even if it's like a new venue or like I'm kind of unsure, like you have that little bit of, especially if you're going alone to a comedy show or any show, you have that like, oh, who am I going to talk to while everyone else is busy? It's kind of weird. There has yet to be a time where I've went to a show, whether it's at a new venue or with a bunch of comedians that maybe I don't know or whatever, there's always someone who's like, oh my gosh, good to see you, or hey, nice to meet you. This is so, like, I know you through the internet, or I know you because you're friends with so-and-so. And it's like, I've experienced way more of that than I used to, especially in the music industry. Filmmaking industry is kind of like the middle, you know, it's like people are pretty welcoming and nice and all that sort of stuff. But I feel like it's just been so different in the comedy world, where I feel like it's I don't know. And maybe again, somebody always has a different point of view on something, but like from my perspective, I feel like it's been so easy to make friends in the comedy world.
I think that's like very similar to what I've heard a lot of like new open micers have been saying about like the comedy scene in Columbus. Just like what you just said, like people are like, oh, I can't believe like how welcoming people are. And like, I love it when I'm hosting an open mic or I'm at an open mic and somebody tried out stand up for the first time and everyone's like, give them a round of applause one more time. And like they're shouting that person out for like the rest of the night, or like after they get off stage, they're like, hey, great job, you know, come. I love that. I think that's amazing. And I'm so happy to have seen that, you know. I also want to say too, like, just to give like some general advice to like anybody, but like I think that like people definitely like discount the like how smart it is to just be nice to people. Like it really is, like, not to sound like a psychopath or something, but like I want to work with somebody who's nice and friendly, and like, I mean, way more than somebody who's like, you know, I got a little bit of a diva, or like I'm just gonna do my own thing, I'm only worried about my own stuff. And like, I don't care who you are. Like, I think like I always am, for me personally, like one of the reasons I love about the comedy scene is that I get to meet so many different people, and like I get to like I love that like any single night of the week I can go out to an open mic and I know people there, or like I'm going to meet somebody new and it's going to be such a cool vibe. And I love that. And I think that like that's why I think a lot of people do it. And there's so many good comedians too in Columbus that are like not doing it to get famous, but they're just like really good. And they're also, or like even like get booked. They just love doing it for the art form, and they also love it for the community, which I think is so special. Yeah. I also want to say something real quick too, but you said like it's like a party, where I kind of also recently when I've been performing, I was getting really nervous to like host an open mic every week, but I keep on telling myself it's like just like a party. We're all just like hanging out, and so I've been like reminding myself like that, and it's not a performance. Completely game changer for like performing, because I'm like, I'm just like having a fun little time with my friends, you know. And if you're laughing, cool, and if you don't, that's all right. Sometimes my friends don't laugh at my jokes either, you know. So like it kind of works out.
Yeah,
but
that's fine. But leave my party right now. Get out. Exactly. You can get out. You particularly right there. Get out.
But I think the audience like also like enjoys that like amount of like having fun and just like kind of riffing with them in a way that's not so much like, I'm not, and I hope it doesn't come off that way. Like, I'm not trying to like riff on anybody or make fun of anybody in the crowd, but I'm just like talking to them. I'm like, oh yeah, you're that one guy now. Them. Yeah,
making
exactly.
Them a part of the show.
I think people like that.
Most of the time, I think people like to be a part of the show. Yes, you're gonna have a shy person every once in a while who's like, you know, introverted enough that they're like, please don't do some crowd work on me. You know, it's
exactly.
Like, I get it.
Yeah,
you know?
and then normally the performer doesn't want to do crowd work on you anyway.
Exactly.
It's not gonna be good.
Yeah,
so.
Unless you're showing up to a show that's built off that, then cool, you can go in expecting that, but. You know, you're going to get some people like that, but it's like, I still think it's fun to, like, hey, again, it's a party. We're all in this together. So, like, a joke that somebody in the crowd can riff off of whatever, or, again, Improv 101, give us a suggestion and let's build off of that. It's like, the more that you're kind of involving those people, I feel like it makes it, people want to be involved in the thing. They're there to be entertained and to watch something, but if you make them feel like they're a part of it, I feel like that's only a win.
Yeah, I think so.
At least in my opinion. One person that I have met in the comedy scene that I would love to hear your opinion on is a gal named Meemaw.
Oh, yeah.
You were like, you're about to put me in the who? What are you about to ask me? Tell me about Meemaw. Like, how does Meemaw pop up? Like, what? I mean, you said it earlier that you would play old ladies in the plays in school, so this is clearly a full circle, bringing it back. But like, tell me about Meemaw.
Oh my god, my heart just stopped. Right? I was like I want to get a what?
You were like,
is this a gotcha moment? I wasn't ready.
Dude, what are you about that?
I was like, can we not? Meemaw's a bitch. I hate her.
Yeah, there we
what
go.
A little catty little. No. So I will say like so for people that don't know, Meemaw is a character I do like based off of like an improv. Kind of like an improvised character, similar to my like Appalachian relatives a little bit. I kind of pull inspiration from that. I also pull inspiration from a character in a play I actually did in high school called, like, her name was like not Meemaw, but I think it was something similar. But it was like, this Appalachian, and that's actually like a grandma, and that's where I got the voice, which is like, hi everyone, how are you today? And like that's kind of how I talk, and it's kind of sweet. And so Meemaw is like this kind of like crazy like grandma character, and I'm not making fun of Appalachian people. I never like to play down to like the, oh, like she's dumb. Like she's not dumb. But she is like crazy in the way of like, you know how like, have you ever like talked to like an older person and they're like oh yeah, so I went to the store the other day and it reminded me of the time that I was a go-go dancer in the 80s. Anyway, can you pass the butter, sweetie? And you're like, Grandma, what did you just say, go-go dancer? Like, when did that happen? When were you going to tell us, you know? And you're like, what did you say? So, like, it's kind of like Meemaw's like that kind of, just like that part of, like, talking to older people, but, like, on steroids. Like, she has this crazy life and backstory. And I love it because it's all of my favorite parts of, like, improv, which I love, like, building out characters. It brings me so much joy. I can dive into like the backstory of a character forever. And Meemaw is like somebody that I love because for the exact same reason, like I have her like, she has like a little backstory and she has all of these things that I think just make her so unique. And there's so many different opportunities to like bring her alive. Like yesterday I was recording a video with my friend Eric Johnson, where I went to the Arnold and I interviewed people as Meemaw.
Did you really?
Yes, I did.
Oh my
we got into the convention center because my friend was like, can we get in for free because we're press? And I'm like dressed up like a grandma and I have like a possum puppet in my hand and they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. I was like,
what?
Yes, we got in for free to the Arnold and I like went around like interviewing people.
What was that like?
It was crazy. It was fun.
By the time this episode comes out, those will probably be out. So
yeah,
you're not really spoiling anything if you
no, sure.
It
was thanks. But it was like, so first of all, I wanted to like vomit the entire time because like as much as like performing is one thing, like going to do like these street interview style things like gives me just like the nervous poops.
I
Like,
don't think I'm ready for that.
No,
like,
it's scary because I'm like, what if they hate me? But you're also like dressed up in character, and I talk as myself and I'm like, hi guys, like I do this character, blah blah, and then I jump into the character and I think that helps. And some people too at the Arnold I think was perfect because like a lot of like influencers were there. Like people were like, you could kind of tell if somebody was like there as like an influencer or like someone had like a camera and a tripod.
Everyone knew that like every third person is like on in some way where they're like,
it's exactly. So we got like a couple really cool people like that, and but it was a lot of fun. It was very nerve-wracking though, and I it's something I want to get better at, just like to try to like build out content and try to do use Meemaw in ways that are outside of like Meemaw's House, which is a variety show I have semi-monthly or maybe not even that much. But I've just been looking for different ways to like bring her to life, and I thought that was like a fun thing. So I'd like to do more street interviews with her, but nothing like crazy happened, but it was just like so fun. And I always give people Werther's Originals after interviewing, and people were excited. I have like the pet possum Kyle. He's like a puppet, like a life-size possum puppet, and everyone was really excited to see him. So yeah, it was cool.
So
it was fun. Yeah.
That is so good. Well, I'm also hoping that I can welcome Meemaw into my podcast universe sometime in the near future.
Absolutely.
At some point. So I will be very excited to at some point interview Meemaw.
I'd love
and
that.
really dive into all the stories. That is, you telling that story terrified me. I couldn't imagine going up to, because I would be like, you're gonna be angry at this, you're not gonna like this, but it's dope that everyone seemingly went along with it. Like, this is fun. Like
some normies, like I had asked like people that like probably just aren't like Instagram influencers or whatever, like people were like, oh yeah, this is like, kind of fun, like kind of like a little a little bit thing, and I think like that was cool too, that some people were like so open for it. But yeah, it was very nerve-wracking. You can definitely tell, like kind of with the like crowd work thing, you're not gonna want to like talk to somebody who doesn't want to be there anyway. So like, I'm not gonna like force somebody to ever do an interview. But there was like one point where this guy, like I had asked him, I was like, what's like your, I don't know if I'll put this on the actual video, but I was like, what's your 5-year, like if you saw your 5-year-old self here, like what kind of advice would you give him today? And the first thing he said was invest in real estate, but he said it so seriously, like I don't think he was joking.
Oh, probably not. Yeah.
And then I was like, okay. I was like, thank you. And like, if you saw your 3-year-old self here, what would you tell him? And he was like, don't give up on your dreams. I was like, okay, great. That's like a normal thing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, if you saw your baby self here, this is all the same guy. I was like, if you saw your baby self here, what would you tell him? And this guy's like selling water, okay? And he's like, drink lots of water. And I'm like, actually, if you give a baby water, they'll like die. So it's like, are you okay? You have some kind of death wish? He said it like so seriously, and I was like, man, like.
What was his reaction?
He's like, well, breast milk has water in it, so it's fine. I'm like, no, like it's literally like not okay. like I kind of like broke character. I was like, it's really important to me that this man understands this.
Please, if you have a child or you're going to, do not give it water.
Yeah, like if you're selling water, you should know this.
That's actually so. I love that his interests are real estate and water.
Yeah, exactly. Just like telling a 5-year-old that you're gonna like invest in real estate. Like that's how I feel about like, you know, not investing in real estate in 2008, but like dang, when I was 12, I really should have.
I really should have been investing in real estate when I was 5.
Yeah, I really should have been doing something. Yeah.
Thanks for that advice, pal.
Yeah.
If by investing in real estate you mean building a new Lego house, I got it.
Yeah, yeah.
We're good.
I had a lot of Barbie houses out of cardboard boxes. I'll have you know. I'm a boss, babe.
So like, even like on, you know, we touched on like how you want to expand stuff with like Meemaw and like what, you know, even what the variety show looks like and what that schedule for that will be and opening the hashtag venue and all this sort of stuff. If you're like looking ahead, even if this is like dreams or goals or whatever, like what do you feel like is in the next, like what are things you want to still accomplish?
Like in my life or like with a
both
5-year plan? Okay. I would say something that I really want to do is I just want to like do more stand-up. Like I really love stand-up. It brings me so much happiness, and I want to do that outside of Columbus. I want to get more gigs. I'd like to get more gigs within Columbus too. It is hard balancing like just my schedule in general of like, you know, helping run hashtag and then also trying to do this, but that's something I would really love to do. I think outside of it, I want to do more things like with Meemaw and different characters. I have a lot of show ideas, like for not only like live shows, but like things that could be recorded. Like I want to do this one show called Hannah Roams and Friends, and I want to like have it just be me as a bunch of different characters, and so like and no one else. I think it'd be really funny. And so I really want to do that. But all of these things just like take time to work towards. But I think at some point it'll get to a point where like I'm fleshing out these ideas like for these live shows, but I would love to start like recording them and like create like an actual like web series or something with like Meemaw or like with like the Hannah Roams and Friends things, or like a late show kind of like style monologue thing that I'd like to do. So I think that's where I'd like to go, because I think it's important to like help build myself as a performer. And also like I have a very niche style that I think Columbus, although amazing, can only be limited to so much. And by being able to post things online, I think it will give me a lot more like opportunity to find my people that would like the stuff that I'm doing, you know? So
100%.
Yeah.
Now, kind of in the same vein of like future goals and ideas and all this sort of stuff, there's an idea that I've been wanting to start asking people on this show. And honestly, you mentioned this earlier, so I feel like what better time to try it out than now. So you mentioned earlier the story of people gathering and sort of like sitting, and everyone would kind of mention something they wanted to do to see if somebody else like had a connection of like, oh, my, you know, like I said, my son-in-law does this thing or whatever.
Yeah.
I've become real big on the idea of bucket lists.
Yeah.
And so like putting those dreams and goals, and not just business or just taking a trip somewhere or whatever, like there's all these different categories to a bucket list. And I've wanted to start asking people if they have an item on theirs, or if they were to put one on, what would that be? So I'm going to ask you, since we talked about this a little bit earlier. And obviously the hope is I want more people to be talking about these things. So, because who knows who's listening? And if at some point someone's like, oh man, I really want to, you know, I want to go do this thing. Who knows if someone's listening is a DM away from like, actually my cousin does this thing. Do you want like, so that's hopefully the idea that I would love to create a domino effect with.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is the perfect time to bring this up and present it to you, because you literally talked about this exact idea earlier.
Yeah.
So whether you already have one or you're just coming up with one right now, if I were to ask you like, what's an item on your bucket list, what do you feel like you're putting on there?
Man, I think like something that I really want to do is like do more like acting as different characters. Like I love creating my own characters, but I really love like taking a character somebody else has created and running with it. And so like either like acting in anything or like doing like sketch comedy from like written from other people, I would love to do. That's like a really big thing for me. Like I just love because I can it's a different like challenge as opposed to like having a different character that you have all this freedom with is like, okay, you are this person and this is your background and then go with it. Like I love that so much and I want to do more of that. So I think like acting is something I really want to try to like lean in towards a little bit more.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I also feel like if I had an idea of like the people who will probably listen to this episode, I feel like that's the perfect thing to tell them because you're going to plant that seed in a lot of people's ideas of like, okay, here's somebody that maybe I can reach out to for these things. Like, this is amazing. Is there anything big that we haven't covered or talked about? Like, are we missing a big like section of your story where you're like, dude, this like we didn't even talk about when I went to war. I was I mean, I'm a veteran of the comedy scene, but you could be a veteran of the world. Yeah. So
I've seen a lot of shit. Man, let me think about this.
So I always like to double check because I never want to like the classic like driving home and someone's like, oh my God, like we didn't even do this. Or me thinking of it later and seeing something on someone's Instagram and be like,
we didn't say anything.
Yeah, wait, what? We didn't talk about that? Like, oh my God. Like, so I always like to double check before we start wrapping up.
That's fair. No, that's good. That's a good question. I don't think, let me think. I don't think there's anything huge for me personally. I think like, I'm trying to do more shows. I'm trying to get outside of Columbus to perform more and to produce more shows, which I'm very excited about. But I think outside of that, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of good things on the horizon that I'm not fully aware of yet, you know? But just trying to just do everything that I can that I enjoy right now. But yeah, I mean, the Columbus Comedy Festival is coming up, which is huge, and we can talk a little bit about that. It's in August, and there's every single comedy venue in Columbus or producer in Columbus, I think, is involved in some way, and so that'll be a really good opportunity. I think you might be doing something. I'm trying to get you to do something with us.
I've already said yes.
Okay, go, perfect. Yes, I got him. It's recorded. It's recorded. Yes. So, but that'll be good. But yeah, nothing big. I feel like we've covered all the points. We've talked about my hometown. So
yeah, we did. We kicked this off with a TED Talk about hometowns. Yeah, we have covered literally everything.
Visit Ohio is going to be going crazy when this comes out.
So like, look this up. I'm gonna go check out Crooksville, Ohio. Yeah. And they're like, not going there. Good, cool. What else? There's a Circle K and nothing else. Yeah. Well, in that case, I have one final question. Yes. The exact same question that I end every single one of these episodes with. So now it's time for your answer. So right now, I want you to pretend like everybody in the entire world is listening to you speak. Yeah. We're throwing logic out the window. They can hear you. They can understand. Yes. And you can also feel free to answer this as Mimo if you want. Yeah. Although it's about to be a very deep question, so you choose. So? Everyone is listening to you right now. You've got a live mic attached to everybody everywhere around the world, and you get to share one thing in this moment with everybody. Yeah. What is it that you really want to tell them, and what would you want them to hear?
I think I would like to remind everybody that to not compete against anyone, and don't be the first person to like limit yourself. I think it's really important that you make sure that you are always trying to be your best advocate and just not being afraid to ask for anything too, because you never know what opportunities will present themselves if you just give it a go. And no one's competing. We can all succeed. There's enough pie to go around, so we don't have to be fighting over one piece of it.
Hannah, this was a blast. Yeah. I am so happy that we got to do this. Like, every time we hang and chat is super fun because we always talk about fun things. But I loved getting to kind of dive into the story of Hannah.
Yeah.
This was very fun.
Thank you. Now I'm going to have to create a podcast so I can learn all these things about you in this way.
Perfect. Yes, we have to
switch seats. It's fine.
Yeah, we can just trade. You just want to stay after we cut on this one, and we'll just switch spots, and then you can just ask me all the questions.
Yes, perfect.
I also I don't want to gloss over like ending this podcast without saying like just tossing you some praise, because one, I already said earlier, like, you're such a cool person. And when we met, and just like, you're so easy to talk to and all this sort of stuff. And you said something earlier, like way earlier in the conversation, where I was like, I absolutely am going to make sure that I reinforce this. And I don't even remember what it was at this point. But the point being, you are super freaking funny. Like, and I remember way earlier you were like, oh, you know, I don't really know if I was funny and blah, blah, blah. And obviously, yes, you've put the work in to get funnier and funnier. But like, for sure, and like, yes, I'm always going to tell this to a comedian friend that I believe in. Absolutely. But like, dude, you're just like on it. That's just all I can say is just like you literally kill it. Like when I've seen you perform in any way on any show, I'm like, how are you thinking of that? I'm like, how are you like as somebody who now is active in all of this stuff, I'm like, Hannah's brain works in such a magical way. And
Weird way.
I will also note that like some friends that I've taken to like some either hashtag shows or a Mima or whatever, they have also been like, I've never heard somebody like be so quick on their feet and like so like on point with like something funny and not just like saying random stuff, but just like saying funny stuff. So I didn't want to end this episode without telling you that like you are super freaking funny. And I absolutely love getting to see you live in literally any way. And it is always a blast. And I'm always like, damn, that's cool that I know that person because she fucking kills it and she's dope. So yes, there was something way earlier that I was like, I'm locking that in my brain before we end this. I am making sure that I tell her that she is genuinely one of the funniest people that I've ever met.
That's so nice of you. Thank you so much. I'm going to be writing that compliment forever, especially from the Godfather of Columbus comedy. It means a lot.
I have knighted you.
I need that in writing.
A true comedian. It has been recording. Nowadays, like back in the old days, you would, etch something in stone or get it in writing and get it notarized. Now, you just say it on a podcast.
Yeah.
So you're good. It's locked into the annals of time, literally forever.
Wow.
Before we officially say goodbye, what do you want people to go check out and where can they find all that stuff at?
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me at Hannah Romes on Instagram. Follow me on there, please. And then also hashtag Comedy Company. We're there every Friday and Saturday. I host the open mics on every Friday. We have them. And I hope to see you there. Just come laugh with us. That's all I want to do. And that will be great. Yeah.
Heck yeah. Dude, this was a blast. I am
Thank
so
you.
happy that we just made this happen.
Yeah, this is so fun. I'm so excited for Mimo to come back too. It's going to be so fun.
Oh, I cannot wait to have Mima on the show. Then we're talking about million stream episode. That's going to be fun.
1,000%.
I love it.